This just took a shocking turn as the Colorado Avalanche received some pretty uninspiring news from Brock Nelson's camp when it comes to the return to him for Colorado, which is a team that is looking for another cup year after year. What is up, Avs Digest? This is Avalanche Nation, your one stop shop for all of your Avs news. So just go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss a thing coming out of here. But like we always do, let's just get right into it. So, this recently has been dropping over and over again from multiple sources that Brock Nelson will likely leave the Colorado Avalanche this summer. Now, that is probably extremely uninspiring news. We saw this again from Adrian Dater. He also made the point that Brock Nelson will most likely not sign with the Colorado Avalanche. And that is just, quite honestly, such a horrible setup for the Colorado Avalanche. And I want to take this video to really be a walkthrough of just how bad the asset management has been for the Colorado Avalanche as of late, but also looking at the Rantanen trade and my opinions on that as well, because I think it's some interesting development to talk about. A little bit after the Avs lost, just because it was such a hard situation to talk about. But the reason why I have these Puckpedia salary numbers pulled up. These are actually the salary numbers for both the offense and defense annual average per year. So this is how much against the cap certain players cost. And it's worthwhile going through and just pointing out how many players the Avalanche are overpaying for and how this hurts them in the future, as well as looking at the current roster for the Colorado Avalanche, looking at something interesting, which is what Elliot Friedman said, which was that the Leafs honestly could have traded Nyes for Rantanen. Now, I don't think this pertains to the Colorado Avalanche. I actually think this was Carolina trying to get different assets for Mikko Rantanen, but it goes to show I don't think that this Mikko Rantanen situation is something you can really put on management. To be quite honest with you, the only thing I would put on management are the recent trades, the trades for Charlie Coyle and the trades for Brock Nelson. I mean, you look at what the Avalanche gave for a old Brock Nelson that was also not having the best year, and they had to give up all of this just to get him. I think that that is horrific trade value. I don't think it's good at all by the Colorado Avalanche, and it is just way too much. Keep throwing assets at the wall and disregard the future. And I get it. I want the teams to go all in when the Avalanche are trying to win, but when you look at this roster, you really don't see a lot of problems. And this is kind of what I was giving. On paper, this was a great trade. This really helped out the Avalanche for this run, but the fact that this run ended in round one, then you look at the trade and the assets they had to give up, you really sour on just how much they had to give up for a roster that didn't do a whole lot. I mean, truthfully, you look at the impacts for each player, and a lot of the trades, there's Charlie Coyle, there's Brock Nelson just kind of sitting in the bottom half of scoring contributions for round one, and that is just what you don't want to see. Brock Nelson, a guy who didn't score a single goal in the playoffs, was traded for by a first round pick and Cal Ritchie, which was the Avs' best offensive prospect. Just horrific value overall. Even if Brock Nelson had done well, I would still say that's horrific value because he was on the end of a contract. So I just don't see the point in making those trades. But as it's getting worse, these are the shocking trades you have to make. Now, where do they go moving forward? Personally, I think that the second pairing of the Colorado Avalanche is going to get nuked into orbit. I think Josh Manson and Sam Girard will not be playing on the same team this season. I think that one of them is going to go and probably should have gone at the end of the 2022 Stanley Cup run. And really, I think the biggest folly for this Colorado Avalanche team was not signing Nazem Kadri back in the day. Now, that was obviously something that was disputed. I mean, he had a great year, and it was interesting that it was kind of confusing to sign him. But really, the Avalanche had the benefit of being able to give him an eighth year. So the salary not necessarily even had to be $7 million for 7 years. It could have been like a 6 for 8. Now, obviously, towards the end of that contract, Kadri would not be that good of a player. He would be almost 40. Even if he had retired by that point, it would have still been a good run, in my opinion, for the Colorado Avalanche. You see, 3 years plus that deal being signed, Kadri's still an incredibly effective center. He's actually moonlighting as their first line center right now. So, with that respect, he's actually in a position currently where 3+ years after he signs that deal, that sounds like a cup window to me for the Colorado Avalanche. And let's say he has another one. That's 4 more years after you won the cup that you would have had an effective second line center. That sounds like a cup window to me. But apparently it didn't sound like it to this management. And I think this management deserves a lot of criticism, not just to Chris MacFarland, but also to Joe Sakic, who is also heavily involved in a lot of these decisions. I think a lot of the blame is going to Chris MacFarland, which he absolutely deserves. Not enough is quite going to Sakic, who is also very much invested. In fact, I think the only reason Chris MacFarland is still employed in this organization is because of Joe Sakic keeping him around. I think if there was another GM, which is something else that I want to highlight, if we're looking at who in the front office should be moving on from, I would say the head coaching job for Jared Bednar is the last thing on the list of what you should do. It's on the list. I think it might need to happen, but it's probably the last thing that you would arguably say needs to happen. I would say a new GM is absolutely in order, but if they went out and got some new GMs that are on the market right now, that would kind of conflict with Joe Sakic. I think that they would have their own opinions, and I think Joe Sakic would rather have a guy like Chris MacFarland that just does whatever he says. So I think there's not enough criticism given to the entire front office right now. But yeah, absolutely. I think that the second pairing needs to be nuked. I think if you're looking at the offensive side, that Charlie Coyle contract is bad. You are just looking at getting out of it without retaining any salary and just saying, all right, move on from that guy. Really, you're kind of looking at what killed the Avs over time. And I truly think when it comes to the Rantanen trade, and we're looking at that Matthew Knies situation and just how bad it went, I don't really put that on the Avs front office. I think, let's say we do sign Kadri. Let's say instead of Brock Nelson, we have Nazem Kadri. We're probably still in the playoffs right now if we did. But I honestly think that the Martin Necas trade would have happened anyway, even if we had signed Kadri. In fact, it would have needed to happen. I think that not signing Mikko Rantanen to an outrageous deal, because he only settled for $12 million for 8 years. I think he wanted a lot more than that. It seems like he was looking for something like 14. And when he says, oh, I would have taken a pay cut to stay, what does that mean? Does that mean 13? At that point, I think it would have been absolutely necessary to keep this team competitive, and is the only reason why this team has a chance at being competitive is because they're not paying out the wazoo for a Mikko Rantanen that has not played as well as he had until right now on another team. He had not been looking like that guy for the last few years. So it's important to remember the situation the Avs would have been in regardless if they had signed Kadri, if they had kept this roster. The only way they would have been able to remain competitive, in my opinion, is still if they traded Mikko Rantanen. I was thinking they should probably do that over the summer last year before they did it, and I still think the same thing. Even if it doesn't go well for the Avs and the Avs don't do well in the playoffs for the rest of this core's tenure, I would still say there is no way it could have been any better if they had actually signed Mikko Rantanen and kept him. It would have just handcuffed them even more. And the fact that you have a Martin Necas making $6.5 million is much better than if you had a Mikko Rantanen basically making twice that and taking up a lot of cap space. I think that this team has plenty of other options. They are always resilient. They are always looking at better moves. I don't think this is the end for the Colorado Avalanche. I think that there was incredibly amounts of faith. There are a bunch of free agents they could still sign to stay competitive, and I don't think we have quite seen the end of this amazing Avalanche core with Devon Toews, with Cale Makar, with Nathan MacKinnon, and Martin Necas as well. We have plenty left to see for this team, Avs Nation, and this is going to be Avs Digest, bringing you on it over and over, year after year, even if it breaks our hearts. So have a good one, guys, and I'll see you next time.